What's up there, Metalwicking Nation? Paul here. So we have a very special episode today. We got a group of some podcasters together to share, how do I say this? To share the story of what's happening with the MEP network, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Network, that is currently at risk of or in the process of being defunded and eliminated. This is at a time when our manufacturing economy needs to be strengthened, needs to be bolstered. We know that is a priority of the current administration. So it's kind of perplexing to us as a group that at the same time, the MEP network, which is such a critical piece of small manufacturers becoming competitive, upskilling their workforce, hiring new people, investing in new technologies, equipment, training, security, ISO systems, all the things that the MEP network does that is so beneficial to our small manufacturers in our country. They're currently being defunded or at risk of, and if we don't take action collectively as a group of manufacturing leaders and voices, it sure seems like that network will disappear and tens of thousands of manufacturers will be left trying to fend for themselves and figuring out how to advance their companies and their communities all by themselves. If you have been benefited from the MEP network in the past, which I know my shop was, ProCNC, with several projects that helped us for sure become more competitive and add jobs and grow our manufacturing company. If you have been in the same boat, we hope that you listen to this podcast, take action, reach out to your local representatives, share your story using the video tool that I have pinned onto my LinkedIn profile, at least for the next few months, until this hopefully resolves in a positive way. But take a listen and share your voice. We really need to hear from you because this is personal. This is not just about policy. This is about jobs. This is about success of small manufacturers. And as we all know, you, the small manufacturers, are the foundation, the bedrock of our economy. The jobs you create other jobs. And this is a time when we need to come together to help support our own community. So hopefully we'll hear from you. Enjoy the show. And thank you for everything that you do.
Nick, why are you in your car?
Well, I should be in my office. The key fob funding got cut, and so we can't get in there because we're off for Good Friday.
You just no unsupervised visits from Nick in the office.
I guess not. I'm a person of interest at my own family business. This sucks.
Your personal escort is the day off.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we've got the gang all here.
So we got a squad. What are we talking about today?
We're talking about MEP funding.
This is a super important topic. Probably more important than anything we've talked about in the recent past. It's a seriously big issue going on right now.
Massive.
Yeah.
I was going to say, look at all of our beards. It's like,
Megan's like, I don't know.
I have a way of connecting that. It goes from like Megan to Paul with the short, then you go to Nick with the longer but dark, then to mine with dark and white, to Mike. I mean, it just, on my screen, it's this like cycle of beards.
Mine's like really patchy and terrible.
All right, back to the serious topic. Sorry.
I feel like I need a Snapchat filter now that puts a beard on my screen. Be really part of the conversation.
That would be hilarious.
Paul, tell us about the MEP network.
Yeah, so MEP stands for Manufacturing Extension Partnership, and it is a public-private partnership. Every single state has at least one, and they're organizations that are here to help small manufacturers be competitive globally. Right. The MEPs help with facilitating grants for training and upskilling and things like lean manufacturing and ERP implementation and cybersecurity and 9001 and so many different things. They are a serious net generator of new revenue, new jobs. I know back in the ProCNC days, we extensively used our Washington one, which is called Impact Washington. Improve our company, which definitely led to hiring more jobs. And right now, the MEP network is in the midst of being cut or being threatened of being defunded, which is just so ironic to me at a time where we're talking about, nationally about, and the administration is talking about this, the importance of reshoring, bringing back strong manufacturing base. And it's like cutting the legs out from all those manufacturers that need to rise to the challenge of all of these new demands of bringing all this work back to our shores, and then cutting out this massive resource that so many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands rely on every year to create jobs.
Yeah, so the
That's what's so confusing.
part of NIST,
Yep.
which is the
National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Standards and
Yep.
Technology. So they administer that program along with others.
Correct.
And what, about 2 weeks ago, maybe they defunded
10.
It was April 1st. There were 10 MEPs nationally that were they were defunded on their renewal date. The good news is since April 1st, today's the 7th or 18th. So in the last 2 weeks, they've backed off that decision and are at least funding them through June 30th, as I understand it. But starting July, there's no promise past that. Plus, there's 11 more MEPs that are set to expire on June 3rd with a July 1st renewal. So from my understanding, also, those 11 should get their renewal notice on May 1st. So here in just a few weeks. And if they don't get that, then that would be an indication that they aren't going to be, they're not going to be funded as well.
Yeah.
Which, as we were just talking, I mean, and Jim, you mentioned there were 2 more on top of that. That puts us, at 23?
23
of, I think, 51 that could disappear here in the next 60 to 90 days.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so what we're here to do as a group is try to, elevate the voice of all the small manufacturers that don't have a really loud voice themselves, and try to raise some awareness to get some action for a groundswell of support for these MEPs through the whole manufacturing community.
Yeah, I think that all of us.
Yeah, it's really confusing.
It's confusing. I think we need some clarity, but I think I also think that we all are in a lot of these small to medium-sized shops that utilize the MEP network on such a regular basis, right? And that their individual voices aren't as strong individually, but if we can be that voice, we have platforms that we literally launch podcasts on. If we can do this, having talked to some people about their experiences with the MEPs, then I think that why else do we do what we do if it's not to do something like this?
Yeah, well said, Jim.
Very well said.
So what would be the alternative to getting it out via podcast? Writing a letter to someone in government or something like that? How effective are those?
Well, that was one of their initial recommendations, was if you have an issue with this or a concern, write your local representatives.
I don't know if they read
those letters.
I don't know.
Some do for sure, and I'm sure many don't. I know I put a notice in our Pro Shop forum about this, and I got responses back right away from a couple of clients that said they've already written, and in some cases they received calls or emails back from their local senators or representatives talking about how serious they're taking this and what they're trying to do about it.
That's great.
Depends on probably the state and the territory and the area, but we definitely need a collective voice that kind of elevates this past just individual letter writing or emails.
Yeah, I know our Oklahoma MEP has provided, kind of some template communications that you could send to your congressional delegation. If anybody wants that as a template to send, feel free to reach out to me and I'll send you what I have. I probably am along the lines of, I don't know how much good that does. It's good to hear that Paul's, got some experience with people that have gotten a response.
Yeah.
I think it's a step in the process.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely don't think it hurts to do that, but I think getting real life stories out there.
I was just going to ask you, Mike, you have a shop. Share with us some of your experience with the MEP. I mean, it's one thing to come from me or who's worked with MEPs, right? Or Paul, who's worked with MEPs, but you and Nick are like in the trenches now with these, you're utilizing these services. What's that like?
Yeah. So, I wish I had done this in the last 2 weeks, because I've told a few people this, in the almost 8 years I've owned Hill, I would venture to say that I've had an overall impact of probably close to $1 million on Hill from our Oklahoma MEP, and that's through a variety of services and that they offer. But whether that is helping me do some case study evaluations on things I want to do in the shop or buy new pieces of equipment, something like that. Like, so an example of that, when we were 5 or 6 years ago, we were thinking about maybe our first machine tending robot. They sent in one of their automation experts, set up a robot at one of my machines running right next to another machine, both running the same part. And we did like a 2-day run, one with a person, one with the robot. And it gave us a cost benefit analysis on making that investment, which we did. They've brought me, this year, we're right in the middle right now of a work with a new customer that will be, mid to high six figures in revenue for us. That is a direct result of the Oklahoma Manufacturing Alliance helping a OEM find a handful of Oklahoma manufacturers that could serve their needs. We've had multiple grant opportunities with them. If I totaled it all up, it would have to be pushing close to $1 million, which for a business my size over 8 years, $1 million, that's a lot of money.
And what does that translate into in people you've hired, or just economic activity that you're now spending throughout the supply chain that's creating jobs at your vendors and so forth?
Yeah. So, when we do our analysis with them at the end of a project, those are all the questions they ask, right? Like, how did this project help you generate revenue? How did it help you save costs? Did it create any jobs? Did it retain any jobs? And, I suppose I could go back and filter those annual reports I've done with them and get a total number. And I'll do that now that I'm thinking about it, and so that I can speak clearly to that as we kind of take this to the next level. But it's multiple jobs created and or retained for sure. It's definitely, there's been a lot of upskilling of my team from it, right? So they'll come in and do training on things or provide grants for training on things. So lots of upskill, lots of new jobs, lots of retained jobs, certainly lots of reduced expenses and increased revenues. So what's that combined economic impact on Hill? I don't know the exact number, but it's significant. And then Nick, you've got great examples
actually
well.
Mine connects to helping your shop. Actually, it's really interesting. So you had an older machine, I think it was a Mori horizontal, and you needed a new conveyor from Hennig, which is what my family's business does. We build conveyors for machine tools. One of our challenges was our sales guys have to take all these measurements to retrofit a chip conveyor for a machine tool that has a broken one from 10 years ago on the other side of the world or whatever, right? And so our local is called IMEC, and IMEC helped us get a grant where we got to basically hire this software company to help us build like a digital configurator. So you put all your measurements in and it shows you the conveyor, and it was cool because we really needed like kind of a digital data sheet for designing and quoting on the spot. But one of the contingencies was that it had to use AR. The grant was for like AR, augmented reality, or virtual reality. So we got what we wanted, but then it went a step further where you could actually like see the conveyor you just designed on the floor. And
That's awesome.
Just a really cool project. Kind of like I'm getting new floors, Home Depot, you could like take a picture of your house and see a different floor. It's kind of our version of that. And without IMAC, we wouldn't have been able to get that done, or we would have had to pay for it ourselves without the grant. So they really helped us a lot. And then, Mike's got a new Hennig conveyor in his machine. So it's pretty sweet. It connects all the dots.
So even an MEP outside of Mike's state, right, is able to directly impact his productivity, his ability to keep people employed gainfully, and upskill them and make sure the processes are smooth, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll share just somewhat anecdotally, but a way that this really comes full circle for other things that our nation needs right now, right? We know that, for example, what's called the DIB, the Defense Industrial Base, which is all the machining companies and all the contractors that make defense equipment, which is in high demand right now. And that supply chain is not nearly big enough. There are so many demands for small to medium-sized machine shops and fabrication shops to join, this supply base. But a lot of times they're not able to because they either don't have a certification like AS9100, or they don't have the cybersecurity compliance that they need. And MEPs nationwide, those are two areas that they, have a lot of focus on. So I know of companies that have gotten grant and support and consulting to get their AS9100 certification, to pursue CMMC certification, so they can actually join, this defense industrial base when maybe they were doing commercial work before. And if they lose their ability to get support to do that, they're going to be kind of left out in the cold. And our country needs this so desperately. So the fact that we're like, again, cutting the legs off of this program when it is one of the main vehicles to help our own country upskill, the supply chain is just so ironic, unfortunately ironic.
Yeah, that's what's so confusing. It's like contradictory to everything that all of the energy is towards. Hey, let's bring manufacturing back here. Let's strengthen our defense base. Let's do this. Let's do that. Everything that the tariffs are supposed to do, this would be the opposite to like push that forward. It's very confusing for me.
Well, even prepping and getting the next generation workforce ready, MEPs are a huge component. Connecting the businesses to the educational institutions. I've spoken to a lot of them that had like different programs targeting specific ages, and they also collaborate with some of the other organizations like First Robotics or any type of Skills USA initiative. They collaborate on those types of things, and it's just a great way to not only connect people who are interested in learning about machining or metal fabrication or additive manufacturing, but also just educating the general public so that they can get on board and supporting some of these initiatives. So like Nick said, it's just extremely confusing because a lot of the big points that, the administration has made is they want to reshore and bring things back to being American made. They want to support the manufacturing sector. And this is not one way to do that. It's actually doing the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we all believe, I think wholeheartedly, the five of us, that manufacturing is the backbone of the middle class in this country, right? I mean, post World War II, that we were able to thrive as a nation and have that robust middle class because of manufacturing, because of those jobs. People could work in a Bridgestone fire factory or Bridgestone tire factory. Wow, that was easy for me to say.
I think you wanted to say Firestone.
I did. And they were able to have a house with a car and three kids, and that was the American dream, right? And you saw over the course of the 40 to 50 years post World War II, that dream erode to where we were less and less, manufacturing made up less and less of the economy, which shrunk and contracted the middle class. We made some really bad policy decisions in the 70s, 80s, and 90s that further offshored jobs, right? And I think that we were all in this community expecting some of these moves to be what brought those jobs back. But because those policy moves were so detrimental to the capacity of the shops in this country, to the workforce development pipeline of this country, to the infrastructure of this country, we don't have those things set up to be able to truly reshore jobs to the U.S., to build it back to where it once was. So we're only further exacerbating these issues by removing the one resource for those small mom and pop shops. And I can't wrap my head around why this was a good idea.
Well, what I'm hoping is that this really was not actually super intentional, and it's a little bit of a casualty of these just massive budget cuts, trying to make government smaller, which, I understand is there's probably some good strategy if it was done well to get rid of waste and stuff. But this is not a wasteful program. There's no two ways about it. And part of what I think we're trying to do here today is bring awareness, in the audience that listens to our shows, because there's a lot of shops out there that haven't even heard the news that the MEPs have been cut, right? Mm-hmm. So if they can hear it, then they can do this collective call to action that we're going to be sharing, and then hopefully Go ahead, Megan.
Well, I think that's a really good point that you made. So like one of the companies I know, FlexLine Automation, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kathy and Lauren, but she just celebrated their second automation fair within the small town that she's from in Illinois. And the first year that she did it, last year, she shared some of the comments and feedback from the attendees that went there. And there are a lot of the small mom and pop shops within central Illinois. They didn't even know that some of the technologies existed that could help expand their applications and operations. And Kathy like advocated for that and tried to demonstrate as much technology as she could so that these smaller businesses who can't even afford to go to trade shows like Automate or IMTS to really get connected with some of those opportunities they can integrate in their own applications. MEPs do the same thing. It helps smaller companies with R&D things that they can't accomplish within their own budget. Nick shared a great example of the grant that he got. It helps them learn more or have resources to some of these advanced technologies that are needed, to run an automated shop. So they can learn programming. They can learn about the new software that's out there. They can learn how to code things. It's just all connected. And, if we really want to build up manufacturing here, we need all hands on deck. We can't exclude anyone. We have to bring everyone together, and MEP was the great way to do that.
Yeah, at a minimum, the communication was just poor. Like, give us some reasons. Like, why are we doing it? What are we doing instead? Like, if we really believe what we say and we want to bring manufacturing back, like, why would we do this? Some form of communication. We're cutting funding because we're going to provide this alternative, or because it wasn't run efficiently for these reasons. But it's just like, hey, we're cutting funding. Like, what? There's no why. And so I'm hoping that some more information comes out to help us make sense of it, because it doesn't make any sense.
So what Mike, Paul, one of you talked about the call to action. What is the call to action here?
I'm so sorry.
It's all right. It always happens when I talk to you.
I think there's a few. Just the official one coming from the MEPs is to reach out to that congressional delegation, right? So, and I'm certainly not a legal scholar by any means, but the way I understand that interpretation of this whole program is it was approved by and funded by Congress, and Congress has the right to withdraw that if they want, but that's not what happened. That's happening right now. The NIST, who is in charge of that, is taking that function. So, I think, from that approach, your congressional delegation should know that something that they approved and that they funded is being cut by, without their approval. And, we have laws and systems for a reason, right? So, if this was a groundswell of support from Congress to get rid of it, this would be a different thing. So I think one of the things directly, is to make sure your congressmen, senators, and so forth know that you don't agree with this, and they shouldn't either. This is their project to support or not support. Outside of that, I think we need a real grassroots effort to kind of get that word out to the shops, and hopefully twofold, right? So I know there's a lot of people that don't interact with their MEP also. Hopefully hearing some of this, you can hear that you should be interacting with your MEP. They have all sorts of great programs for you. I know, for example, this week I saw that the Illinois, what'd you say it's called, Nick?
IMEC, Manufacturing Excellence Center, Illinois Manufacturing Excellence Center, I think is what it stands for.
They have an open, I think until April 30th, grant application right now for up to $50,000 as a matching grant and the list of things that qualify was a mile long, right? Whether that's a new piece of equipment, software, website, any sort of technology, training. If you're in Illinois and you plan to you have $100,000 project of any sort in your manufacturing facility in the next year, you should be applying for that grant. You're going to get up to $50,000 of it paid for, right?
Yeah, like we did. Maybe It was a different grant, but we applied for something. It worked. I just told the story. I think that's the other part of the call to action is everyone who has benefited from their MEP. Sorry, is it? MEP. IMAC ends with a C. MEP. Everyone who has benefited, share how. Like I just did, like Mike did, like Paul did. Like if you've benefited, share how it impacted your business and put some practicality to how they help us as manufacturers.
Yeah, I think if we can flood, social media channels with stories of how an MEP has affected your business, I think that would be great. And tag your congressional delegation in that, tag NIST, tag your local MEP, tag all of us.
Hell yeah.
And let's all share that, and let's get that word out there and just show the impact, that the real impact it's having on those jobs retained, those upskills, those new jobs, those types of things.
I want to be tagged. Sorry, Megan, go ahead.
I think I think another thing we need to focus on too is also include what happens within your community if the MEP goes away. Because this isn't just affecting businesses, this is affecting everyone in your community. The way that things are costed out and how jobs work and how businesses run. Because there's that statistic out where, you know, for every dollar that manufacturing makes within the community, it's $1.25 or something like that other smaller businesses outside of the manufacturing sector make. So
yeah, that multiplier.
That's a great point.
So also share what's going to happen to your community if your MEP goes away. I think that's
and when we say share, I think there's a number of ways you can do this. You know, some people are comfortable, pulling out their phone and making a little video just, of them talking for, a minute about, what they can do or what we're asking for here. If you're not comfortable doing that, you can just write up a little blurb, right, and share it. I'm going to share a tool. We use a tool called Video Ask, which makes it really easy for people to submit a little video of themselves on their phone or computer. I'll be sharing that in a post and pinning that to my profile for the next many weeks. So you could always come look up my profile and find that link and make it, and then we can help share that as well across our networks. But yeah, do whatever you're comfortable with. And I'd say try to push yourselves a little bit out of your comfort zone. If we got tens of thousands of people, making short little videos about the impact that MEP has had on their businesses and their communities and what would happen if they don't have those, that would be, I think, a pretty big impact and hopefully make a difference in getting this reversed. And that's really what we're here to try to facilitate.
Paul, I love that Video Ask platform. I'm going to have to look into that. I was just going to say, hey, anybody who wants to make a video with me, FaceTime me. But your platform sounds way better than anybody having to FaceTime me.
It's it's a great tool, but anyone could just make a little video, post it on LinkedIn or wherever they can.
Well, maybe not anyone. I like what you said about do what you're comfortable with. Because like for Megan, she's comfortable with that. Jim's comfortable with that. Mike tried to do a selfie style video. He got so nervous he started crying. So for him, he might write a letter to somebody instead.
I mean, if you want to really take yourself outside of your comfort zone too and take it a step further, anybody in your local community that is a good leader, do like a town hall or city hall style meeting and invite your representatives and government officials. And if they don't show up, make sure everybody knows they didn't show up. Call them out on the spot, make them feel uncomfortable. During those meetings, you should bring in those smaller businesses to medium-sized businesses and have them testify why MEPs are so beneficial. I just feel like people are more willing to make decisions when you're face to face with them and making them uncomfortable than you are over a video or digital platform. But I like making people uncomfortable sometimes.
I'm here for that. I actually love that idea, Megan. How cool would it be for the five of us who are all in different cities, right? Different states, the people that are also going to be sharing this, right? The other people who have platforms and podcasts and shows, etc. What if all of us did set up a town hall? What if we were able to coordinate that, and maybe not all at the same time, right? Different time zones and stuff like that. But how powerful would that be to coordinate something like that in our own communities? I love that idea, Megan. Well done.
I mean, I'll go straight to Washington and hold an event there. I don't care. Don't challenge me with a good time. I accept.
When are we going? I've gotten to hang out with you twice this year. I'll look for a third excuse. So let's make it happen.
That's funny.
If anybody wants to sponsor,
we'd have to start a GoFundMe. Jim.
There's also and we can share this when we share this video or this recording, but I know the MEP Network they have this week kind of started using the hashtag MEP Matters. So, you can certainly use that hashtag in your testimonials, and we'll share that when this goes out.
Mike, didn't you get a link to the American Small Manufacturers Council or something, American Small Manufacturers Coalition? Is that something we can share out with this video as well?
I'll confirm, but I think we can. Yeah, they've put together some some kind of LinkedIn content that you could share. And
I was looking through those images. They've got one of their images is direct impact of what the MEP network provides, and it's over 108,000 jobs created or retained last year, 15 billion in new and retained sales, 5 billion in new client investments, and 2.6 billion in cost savings. Explain to me again why we're not keeping this program.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly from that same infographic, that's across 35,000 shops and manufacturers. Take all those numbers and divide it by 35,000. That's a big number on an average basis.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking multiple jobs, tons of money.
Yep.
With each one of those clients or recipients, whatever. Or I don't know how they refer to somebody, but yeah,
Did we lose
real. Paul?
I'm still here. I don't know why my camera disappeared.
Yeah,
it's you got your funding cut for your
my camera.
This is why we need these MEPs, man, so Paul can come back on.
Paul can have video. Nick can get into his shop. We've got to stop this funding cut.
Exactly.
So we're going to all publish this. We've got other friends in the industry that you might be hearing it on someone else's channel. We believe next week we're going to be doing another recording with a few folks from the industry, where we can maybe dive a little bit more into some of the numbers and the impact and more call to action. Be on the lookout for that. What else we got, guys?
Yeah, hopefully I don't know that by next week we'll have some sort of clarity, but for me, I just give me a why. Like, what's the reason for it? Give me some why or what else or whatever, because it goes exactly opposite what everyone's pushing for. It just makes no sense. That's the biggest thing I want, just some clarity.
Yeah, because then at least with the why, that gives us an opportunity to pull together and come up with some sort of solution. So
right.
Exactly.
I totally agree, Megan. If they're like, if the why was like, yeah, we just don't feel like the funding is creating enough X, like, well, we could bring all the examples of how it is, or, but it's just so confusing.
Yeah. So the audience could certainly be on the lookout for articles or interviews or anything, that they hear from spokespeople about what's really the story going on here, and share that, because sometimes someone does an interview and people don't hear about it, and it holds the key to something that's really crucial.
Yeah.
And, and maybe the biggest thing to take away from this is, beyond the fact that the size of the problem this is there's an element of urgency here. There's
absolutely,
they've already defunded 10. There's 11 on the slate next in 45 days, 60 days.
Yeah.
This is we can't afford to pause and see what's going to happen with this. I think it's really something we need to be proactive and get this message out there and share your personal message, share your shop's message. And, I think we need to make all these voices heard that this matters to us, and it has a real impact on our businesses, which then is going to affect the communities and the economy and everything else.
I would like to hear from those MEPs that already got cut and see if we can do like some sort of stitch video with whoever's leading those MEPs and talk about this is what's going to be missing if we don't survive this kind of thing. Like maybe one thing that's going to be missed or something.
Yeah, that would be great.
So, Mike, what were those original 10 again? It was Hawaii. Do you know them offhand?
I honestly don't know them off the top of my head. I think Paul might.
If you want to send that out, Paul, we can include that with the posting for this recording.
Didn't Paul post?
Here, I can actually get it real quick.
On like LinkedIn, he posted like a map where it showed all the ones that had already been done.
Okay. I think we should just tag those MEPs though in all the posts that we go forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll put it on our site under the episode. We'll put that image.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, we could even, as a call to action right now, if you know somebody or the leader, anybody listening to this from any of those MEPs, connect them with one of the 5 of us or wherever you heard this episode, whatever channel it's on. Connect that person with the leader for that MEP. If you know somebody at that MEP, we'd love to have them on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's just get this out there and let's drive, keep driving this bus and making sure that we get the Metalworking Nation to kind of get in on this and share those stories. I think that's the critical part, is just make sure everybody understands what's at risk here. And if you're listening to this and you haven't engaged with your MEP, you may feel like this doesn't affect you, but it does, because your customers are engaged with the MEP. Some of your vendors are engaged with the MEP. So it's going to affect
you. Probably should have engaged with your MEP.
Yeah, and if your takeaway from this is, man, I should engage with my MEP, then heck yeah, engage with your MEP.
And if you guys have petitions that you're already filling out and passing around, pass them around to us too, and I'll sign every single one of them.
Oh yeah.
Well, gang, thank you.
Thanks for helping.
Yeah, so this is going out on a few different podcasts, so I don't know which sign off to use, but we sign off on making chips the same way every time. So without the MEP, we're not making as many chips.
If we're not making chips,
we're not making money.
Not making money.
Making money.
We're not making money.
Yeah, there you go. We're not making money.